Hello, and welcome to another episode of Generally Speaking. I'm your host, Bill Lawrence. Today is Sunday, August 17th. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Need that like and subscribe. And we've got the little notify bell. Hit that too. So, what's going on? Groundwater. You know, groundwater, water in the ground. Well, some people aren't aware of it, but you can have rivers, underground rivers, water that travels like a river underground. And not only that, but you can have underground lakes. Huge ones end up with the name aquifers, and these are like giant lakes underwater. Obviously, they're mixed in with the dirt and all, but they're big collections of water. And these are kind of the things that wells you take advantage of. And you drill a hole in the dirt, and there's the water. See, there you go. There's water down there. Well, these aquifers serve many communities. There are different huge ones all over the place. And in the places where droughts have been happening, in particular, these aquifers have been tapped more and more and drained and drained and drained. And the thing to remember is these aquifers take hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, to have been created in the first place. And we're depleting them much more quickly in just decades. We're depleting them, and in fact, in some places, especially out west, the ground level has even sunk like 6 inches because the water has been drained so much from these aquifers. Well, this story I was reading was about aquifers. They're all over the place. Aquifers around the world, generally speaking, are becoming hugely depleted. So it's one thing, when the rivers, the lakes that you have, and the water coming off the mountains from the snowfall, or just the rains, and they fill up the lakes and the reservoirs, and you use that water, and it becomes scarce. The levels start going down. Well, you still have the aquifers, and you can tap from them. Well, now those are going dry because you can keep tapping them. They're not infinite, and they go dry just like the water on the surface. They're going dry. So this report was talking about the water supply going down, and I had recently, excuse me, read a story about a town in either Pakistan or one of the countries in that area, where the city is just running out of water completely, just completely running out of water because they had no planning when they built it. It was, suitably. In other words, it took its water rationally when it started, but then it became a boom town. It became like a Silicon Valley, and nobody cared about the growing infrastructure that the water couldn't supply it. And so there are places where there's no waters on Sundays and Mondays, and you have to come and wait for the trucks to come around with water. Humans don't plan, they don't care until the fire is already burning, and that's when they think maybe we should do something about preventing fires. We're humans. We're terrible. Oh, that's groundwater depleting. What do we got? Ukraine war. That's an ongoing story. And Hungary and Slovak have, decided they're not on board with the rest of the European nations about the Ukraine war and what it's all about. And according to them, it's just a Russia and U.S. Proxy war between two countries. It's not Russia and Ukraine. It's Russia and the West are in there. And so this brings me to the topic of Ukraine and the story that goes about it. Generally speaking, it's the story that I heard from a channel that I ordinarily like, called The Bulwark. And I usually like their reporting. They have good national reporting. But like several of the channels that I like, that I go to, that I think have great reporting nationally, whenever something ends up touching Ukraine, they totally lose it. They have no idea what they're talking about. They take the same narrative that it's all about um, Putin just is a madman and decided he wants to take over some territory, and Ukraine is right there. He's going to go grab some territory. He's a madman. So I wanted to comment on this for people who don't, know the alternative narrative that goes on about the Ukraine story. And before I get into that, I just wanted to mention this idea that this fellow from the Bulwark was saying how Putin is a madman. I'm just saying, so is the U.S. a madman for all the countries that we've gone into? Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, all the countries that we've gone into. Are we madmans for going in there and taking over those territories? Oh, you might say, well, we didn't try to take it over. We're not trying to make it a part of the United States. Okay, I'm sure that made the people there, comfort, gave them comfort to know that all we did was just drop bombs for the heck of dropping bombs, and getting rid of the leader there. For what reason? Often for the oil, and we want to have better access to it. So yeah, but we're not madmen for doing that. But he's a madman. All right. So just getting off topic about he's a madman. But what's the story? The story goes back to World War II. When that ended, the three big powers, Russia, Great Britain, and the United States, got together and said, all right, what are we going to do with all the properties here and now that Germany had, and that exists right now in Europe? How are we going to carve it up? Because of course that's what they do: carve it up. Spheres of influence. I'll control here, you'll control there, and they set their boundaries. And there they were. Okay, you've got this, I've got that. And the West, decided to make a coalition called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, which they're all bound together in case an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And Russia wasn't a part of this. Why? Because Russia, even though they were one of the parties to the, okay, we're the victors, we won, we defeated Germany. And, most people don't seem to understand Russia's role in defeating Germany. Russia lost, infinitely more men than the Allies did in this war. We talk about, especially in this country, D-Day, and our guys, landing on the beaches and on Normandy, and how we won. It's like the West won, but no, really, if anybody contributed the most to this war, it was the Russians. Number one, just in all the German soldiers that they defeated when the Germans tried to advance on Russia. Russia's a hostile territory. It's cold, it's frozen, and the Russians at least had some experience with that, whereas the Germans didn't. And the Russians were on home soil, so they had that advantage. And so the Russians lost millions and millions and millions of soldiers, and of course so did the Germans. But it was because of the Russians' efforts that the Germans became as depleted in their manpower as they were. Any rate, so we got the carving up, and you're on that side, I'm on this side. Well, as time goes by, more countries want to join NATO, and these countries, as they join, they become closer and closer to Russia, and Russia watches this progressive increase in the NATO alliances and starts getting a little bit concerned that, first of all, Russia isn't a part of this alliance, and Russia wanted to be. Russia said, "Listen, oh, I want to be a part of NATO." And the West did not want that, especially the United States. If there's a belligerent country on this planet, if you want to point a finger, the U.S. rates it in every measure of belligerence. It's the United States. The United States did not want Russia to be a part. So Russia could have been a friend, could have been an ally, but no, we wanted to make them an enemy. All right, so increasingly, NATO countries keep joining NATO. It come closer and closer to Europe. I mean, to Russia, and Russia starts raising concerns. And there are conferences, there are meetings, and Russia saying, "Listen, you're going to have to draw a line somewhere. You guys, it looks like you're preparing a military invasion on us. You're encroaching. You're coming closer and closer with your NATO military to us, and this is disconcerting." Any country doesn't like someone they call the enemy getting closer and closer to their shores. So there were deals made. There was this one that's always mentioned. It's famous, the Minsk Agreement about okay, we're not going to expand anymore. Sorry, we did kind of expand, but we won't do anymore. And then they threw that agreement out the window and expanded some more. So they keep getting closer and closer to Russia, and just the fact that a country is a part of NATO is one thing. But it's not just that. It's that the Americans want to put their leading edge military technology inside those countries. So now we've got Poland, which is like only a hip. It's close. It's very close to Russia, and we've got um, U.S. missiles, positioned in there. Well, for defense, it's just for defense. Except that these same missiles, if you flip a switch, now become attack missiles, and that can easily reach Russia. So Russia is getting to a boiling point where the West is putting its military on its shores, right next door. Then in Ukraine, in particular, there were political activities going on as to who is ruling and who is not, and who the United States likes to rule, and who the United States doesn't. Because one thing the United States has a big habit of, it's sticking their business into other people's politics. Like, for instance, will happily assassinate people that are running for president in other countries. Chile's Allende was the most famous example. But we're always sending CIA in to destabilize any efforts at a president that we don't like, and foment rebellion, and support the one that we do like. And of course, the ones we like are the ones that will do anything the United States asks, which essentially means let the corporations go in there and take all the minerals and resources out and give the people nothing and make sure they don't get any taxes. In other words, they just get the most sweetheart deals possible. Those are the people we like in power. The people who say no, you can't do that, and we keeping our resources. And if you want to work here, you got to do it in a consumer friendly, country friendly way. We don't like that, so we try to kill them. Well, at any rate, something like this was going on in Ukraine. There were people who wanted to be a part of NATO, and there were people who wanted to stay friendly with Russia. And you can understand this. Russia is right next to you. Russia is a big military country. You'd like to be friendly with them. And you know what? Russia isn't a bad person to be friends with. They do trade, they do deals, and they don't harass you. And so there's really nothing wrong with that. What's more, and this is another important part, is on the part of Ukraine that really touches the Russian border. There's a large Russian population. They speak Russian. It's like in some cities like San Francisco, they have areas called Little China, or in New York, they have an area called Little Italy, in which it's like you're in Italy or you're like in China when you're in those neighborhoods, because everything looks just like those countries. Well, in Ukraine, they've got a little Russia area. And at any rate, there were internal conflicts between the other side, the western side of Ukraine, with those people in the Russian speaking Russian culture enclaves, and the conflicts became violent with military attacks and missile attacks, bombs being dropped, and of course the Russian people, looking for help from Russia. Russia would go in and give them aid. They would give them, and this became, of course, a rising conflict. And eventually, it gets so intense that the Russians invaded. They took over the Crimea, which is that section which is mostly Russian. And this is on top of the fact that the elements in Ukraine that wanted to join NATO came into power during something called the Maidan coup. And Maidan is the name of a square, Maidan Square, where there was a protest, and it's alleged to be fomented by the CIA. Um, eh, you know, instigating and putting radicals. At any rate, the person who was democratically elected um, got kicked out, and another person was put in. And I think that might have been Zelensky, actually. So, at any rate, this whole affair is considered to be a Western CIA directed event. That who's in power now is a Western puppet, essentially. And not only that, but just internally, organizations within the military, one in particular called the Azov Battalion, is an avowed Nazi battalion. Now, of course, the Nazis were in Germany, and these people are, but it's a kind of a familial thing. Like we support that Nazi idea, whatever that is. The Nazis were for the Aryans. These white people are the best on the earth. I don't know if the Azov Battalion likes that, but for some reason, a lot of the right wing people just like that Nazi symbolism, that Nazi feel, that Nazi flavor. And the Azov Battalion had the Nazi, swastikas. They used it as their symbol, and they became a strong arm element within the government, which was already destabilized with the West sticking its fingers in there. And they would, threaten people to, "You'll do what we say, or you'll be dead." And that kind of has an influence a lot on a lot of people. Being dead kind of influences your decisions. So what we've got the NATO pushing onto Russia's doorstep. We've got the U.S. having a puppet government in Ukraine, and we've got a Russian population on the doorstep of Russia that wants to have help, and thinks of themselves as Russian. So these are all the elements we have here. And the biggest of them all is the NATO possible membership of Ukraine, which Russia doesn't need missiles on their doorstep. And just to give an example of how this is significant, in the 1960s, Cuba and Russia were friends, and they still are. And Cuba, of course, was under a blockade. I'm not under a blockade. It was under sanctions from the United States. It still is. We hate Cuba, hate them, hate them. Why? Well, because they won't let American businesses run rampant and have their way. So that's what makes you enemy number one from the United States. So we've been doing everything in our power to screw Cuba. Well, Cuba and wait, I shouldn't say just screw them. Like sanctions. We've also invaded them. There was that famous Bay of Pigs when Kennedy was in power, where they a bunch of civilians who were supported by the CIA, by the government, went in there, landed on a boat. They were going to assassinate Castro, and it just was a total failure. They got wiped out. And so, I mean, the United States has been trying to attack Cuba, and Cuba has concerns and was asking Russia for some help. Russia said, "You know what? We'll give you some missiles, so you don't have to worry about American spy planes or American jets just coming over and literally trying to bomb you. You can have missiles; you can shoot them down." And these missiles weren't just capable of shooting them down. Since Cuba is only like 90 miles from the U.S., they were easily able to strike the U.S., and the U.S. wasn't going to have any part of it. So they put up a blockade. They had military ships, circle Cuba, and when the Russian ships came with the missiles, there you go, standoff. Two major superpowers, nuclear armed superpowers, were having a standoff. So this could have been World War III. And I'm sure there are documentaries, there are stories about it, all that what happened and how it came to a conclusion. But what happened is Russia pulled back. Russia was the one with the sane head here. And in fact, very often it's other people that have the sane head, and it's the Americans that are the madmen willing to push nuclear arms. Okay, well, this is just to say, what it's like to have attack missiles, close to your shores. And this is what Russia is looking at: attack missiles on its doorstep. So they don't want this. And so this is what the war is all about. NATO. It's about NATO going in there. And let's just say some more about this. You know, they're being taken over. Ukraine is being invaded, and it's a one-sided war. I mean, Russia is huge, Ukraine is small. Ukraine would have to collapse at some point, concede, and make a deal. And they were willing to on a number of occasions, but the United States and Britain said no. All right, so this is not a Ukraine-Russia war anymore. This is a Russia NATO, Western powers war. When Ukraine no longer has any say in what bargaining is going on, then Ukraine is no longer a player. You can't even say Ukraine. This is a Ukraine war. This is the West and it's NATO. All right, so this has been documented. All the things I've been saying, in depth by many people, even by people inside Ukraine. They've showed this story to have legs to run on. Now, I mean, there's always two sides to every story, and you got to put pieces together yourself. And sometimes it comes to a point where you just have to recognize how it is within yourself. That's the way I see it, and so there you go. There's an explanation of the Ukraine war. I didn't want to go into that so much, but I thought maybe many people needed to at least hear that story. All right, so I'm curious as to what's going to happen if the Democrats finally get back into power. I mean, certainly, at the very least, I'm hoping that for the 2026 elections, the Dems will get back in, assuming that the Republicans haven't messed with the system. There are certainly investigations going on to what the last election was with voting machines and certain very strange anomalies, but remains to be seen. If the Dems get in, at the best, they'll be able to stop a lot of the more horrific efforts by the Republicans. But I'm wondering, as far as Ukraine goes, the story about the madman Putin invading Russia is the one that's carrying all the water at this point in time. So I'm wondering what the Dems will do about it. Are they going to continue, putting money, arms, weapons into Ukraine and letting them, fight till the last man? I always love that. We'll make sure that Ukraine fights until there's no more Ukraine, until they're all dead. That's a really positive prospect. All right, so yeah, I'm wondering what that'll happen with Ukraine. What happened in D.C.? Trump sent in his troops. He wanted to take over D.C. He wants to flex his muscles. He wants to show the American people that troops being sent in by the government to different cities is normal. I did it in L.A. I'm going to do it in D.C. I plan on doing it in other blue states, mostly blue states. To stop the crime, which is always higher in red states, but it's the blue ones we're targeting. Got any ideas why he targets the blue states? No. At any rate, here he is, dictatorial guy sending troops, and DC is suing about keep them out, and actually they won a restraint. So they got told they have to take it out. And the judge there, he was saying, listen, before I issue an out and out injunction about saying, no, you can't, why don't you guys, talk it over amongst yourselves and see if you can come to some kind of amicable agreement, which I don't know what's an amicable agreement. Either you got troops taking over the main thing was they were taking over the police department. So you can't do that by all the rules of the Constitution and all the rules of everything that apply to rules. And so they're making some kind of a deal, but the guy who's doing the analysis, guy Legal AF is their site, and they were saying the deal really didn't look like it changed much. So it's probably going to come to where the judge eventually says, "All right, look, just forget it. You can't do anything. Don't even try to make a deal. You can't do this at all." How long that will hold, I don't know, because everything gets forwarded up to the Supreme Court, emergency request, emergency, and then the courts always say, yeah, lower courts, you were wrong. Trump can do whatever he wants. So that's that. What else? In Brussels, it's the city in Belgium. The airport baggage handlers are refusing to handle any planes from Israel. And this goes along with a study I did, a report I did earlier about um, shipping in Greece. The boats that pull at the docks, the dock workers refuse to deal with any ships from Israel. So it's nice to see that some people, the workers, are actually standing up for the Palestinians being bombed and tortured and killed left and right. Israel just recently killed a whole block of journalists. They were in the journalists' tent, and Israel, just dropped the bomb right on them. Is it a huge outcry about how you just targeted journalists? And of course, no Israeli journalists. Any journalists who might criticize Israel, just kill them all. Just kill the journalists. They're evil, and that's all there is to it. So what do we got? A New Zealand woman. Um, she lives in the United States. She works in the United States. I guess she's on some kind of a visa. She was taking her children across the border to Canada to send them on a flight to New Zealand for a birthday party, family, something or another. I don't know why go to Canada for the flight. Maybe it's cheaper. But at any rate, she comes back, and maybe there was something wrong with her papers. I don't know what. But she gets thrown in jail because ICE is always looking for any excuse. They got to reach that 30,000 number, 3,000 a day, whatever. So her and her 6-year-old son thrown in detention. And, it's wonderful, these guys. They put you in there incommunicado. You don't know anything. You're not allowed to talk, call anybody. Her family just wondered what happened to her. Where'd she go? 2 weeks. They don't know a thing. They think she's kidnapped, which, does happen. And so eventually, I guess she was granted permission to call one of her friends in the States. And finally, they found out, where she is. But still, nobody knows exactly why she's there. Nobody knows if it was a papers thing or what. Nobody knows how long she's going to be there. And, the family in New Zealand even called the New Zealand State Department, and the State Department tried calling the U.S. State Department, tried to get in touch, get information. Now, you imagine it's state levels, and they still can't get any information. This woman's there for who knows how long, and no telling when she's going to get out, no telling when she was there. And this is just horrible. This is Trump administration. Trump, yeah, you voted for Trump. You voted for the biggest bad person in the world. What? Here's another funny story. Some guys complaining about the ICE. They're out in the street and trying to look to pick up anybody they can who looks brown. And this guy's yelling at him, and they're yelling back at him, and he's eating a Subway sandwich. He's got a nice big sandwich, and he throws it at the guy. Throws the sandwich, and he starts running, and they all start running after him, and they catch him. And the Fox News is talking about, you attack us, and we're gonna come for you. Yeah, we're gonna throw the book. Felony charges, felony. You got different levels of crime. Misdemeanors not so bad. Felonies really bad. You get felony, you're looking at years minimum. That's the bottom choice for felony. Top choice is life. So he's going to go for felony charges, at least 8 years in jail for throwing a Subway sandwich at someone. Well, he got let off, as a misdemeanor because it's just not even considered assault. It's considered, saying bad words to somebody. At any rate, but that's what they want to do. They want to give him a felony. Meanwhile, one of the January 6th protesters who was filmed, doing this January 6th protesting, you see him yelling, kill him, kill him. He's talking about, the police. He wants to kill them. Well, this guy who's talking about killing the police and doing who knows what else, he gets a Department of Justice appointment. Yeah, the guy who throws the sandwich, he has to get a felony charge. The guy who says kill him, he gets he gets an appointment at the Department of Justice. How nice. All right, so there's some infighting going on between the ladies in the Republican sphere, and this seems to be a thing of reporting on just because it's humorous. It's nice to get some humor every now and then. So they're throwing insults back and forth. It's amazing, actually, the level of insults and language that goes on now because you would never hear these things. Not like 20, 30, 40 years ago. You just wouldn't hear the words, the sentences, the phrases that are just commonplace now. So anyway, one was talking about the other one and says, yeah, she's on her knees a lot, but it's not for praying. Oh, I love the insult. There were so many more insults. It isn't funny. All right, what do we got else? A story about an auto supplier. He has to cut jobs and close his warehouse because of tariffs. Tariffs are hitting everybody hard. They're not doing anybody any good so far. Now, of course, the story is, well, yeah, there'll be some initial pain, but then it'll be a golden tomorrow. Yeah, don't hold your breath. All right, we got a terrorist. The word terrorist. I just wanted to comment on this. What is a terrorist? A terrorist is you think of a couple of people in black ninjas outfits, with carrying bags in their backpacks, and they're setting them off in the middle of the town, killing all innocent people. These are what terrorists are. But think about it. What's a terrorist? A terrorist is anybody using violence, for their cause. And in that sense, any country is a terrorist. Any country that drops bombs is a terrorist. Terrorist is really just a word to say I don't like you. They're bad. It's just like as if they're against some kind of objective standard of badness. It's like I didn't even say they were bad. Bad is out there. It's in the sky, and it belongs to them now. They're terrorists. They're bad. No, they're bad because you don't like them. If they're doing something, those exact same people are doing something that you like against somebody you don't like, then they're patriots, right? They're freedom fighters. Terrorists. It's just a word of who you like and who you don't like. All right. So, Israel first. Israel first. What am I talking about? FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Association. I don't know what the A stands for. At any rate, the United States recently put out an order that FEMA will not provide any aid to states or municipalities that don't suppress anti-Israel speech, on actively suppress it, or don't suppress any company that boycotts Israel. Who's first? Israel's first. FEMA will not come to the aid of flood victims, fire victims, tornado victims if you dare to offend Israel. Pretty pathetic. It is really amazing the stranglehold that Israel has on this. I know one of the Congress people is saying Israel needs to Israel not APAC, the AIPAC needs to register as a foreign agent, which they should. I mean, any country, any lobby group that's trying to lobby for its homeland country should be registered, but they get pushback on that. The Israel stranglehold on our politicians is unbelievable. All right. I was watching a little quickie thing about someone who has callers calling into his channel, and he was asking the person, yeah, well, what do you consider core American values? And I was trying to think, core American values. What are core American values? You know what? I'm not very good with literature. I'm not good with expounding, with just throwing words coming out of my mouth, even though I'm having a lot of words now. It's because I'm reading what I've got already typed up. But core American values, what are they? So the rule of law, the Constitution. Okay, Constitution, I get that. Judicial system, that's sort of like rule of law. But democracy. Oh yeah. We're big on democracy. Freedom of the press. Yes, we got those things. So there we go. Core American values. Now, I'm sure a lot of people in a lot of countries have laws. They got rule of law. They all like that. And they've all got a constitution, most of them. So I don't know as if that's specifically America. We got a judicial system. They've got judicial systems. So even though they're core American, in a lot of senses, they're core lots of other countries as well. And of course, democracy is up there. And some people say we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And there's some kind of sense to that. Republic means we got a bunch of different states coming together, and democracy it means demos the people, and the people don't vote for anything except for other people who do the work. We vote for the presidents and the senators, but we don't vote on any acts. We don't vote on any bills or anything that's paid. If you ask me, we need to change that a little bit. There should be some kind of input. And sometimes I wonder about that because so many people are just stupid. I don't know if I really would want it, especially they're so susceptible to mainstream media manipulation. Now, if we could get some kind of independent media that wasn't just paid for by mega corporations that are part of the political system, maybe that it would work then. But I think still we should have some kind of public input. All right, an Academy Award was given to this movie called No Other Land, which was about life in the West Bank in Israel, the West Bank, and the West Bank is sort of like a mini version of Gaza, and it's not as horrible, but it's plenty horrible. It's still like a place where, well, for one thing, you've got settlers. As I call them settlers, really they're civilian. I guess a vigilante would be a better way to do it, or not even vigilante, terrorists. Terrorists. That's the word I want to use. Oh, I think they're bad, so I'm calling them terrorists. Civilian terrorists attack Palestinians in the West Bank and threaten to shoot them or do shoot them and take their property. And this is mine now. Well, life there is hard, and this movie you can't find anywhere. It's not on Netflix. It's not on anything. Well, I checked that out. I did a look on it, and actually, it is somewhere you can find it. But I noticed there was a caveat that said you might have to use a VPN to get it. VPNs hide your IP address. You don't know what country you're from. You might have to look like you're from Canada or Israel in order to get it. I don't know. But it was interesting how even if you can get it, it's just not popularly available because it puts who? Israel in a bad light. Oh, that's bad. So let's go to the International Court of Justice, the ICJ. Well, recently we got this big thing going on about one of the judges on the International Court of Justice. And of course, justices, they're supposed to be impartial, right? Justice is blind. It's just got a blindfold on its eyes and it's just holding up the scales. and it's just whichever way the scales balance. That's how justice goes. Don't care if you like it or not. It's justice, right? So this woman was blatantly put out. She says, "Yes, well, I make my decisions on what God tells me, and God tells me that I have to do everything in my power to protect Israel because we live in the end times, and Israel is an important part of the end times." So here we go, lunatics in the Justice Department. I said it before. The no one no one is impartial. Everybody grows up with feelings and beliefs, and justices, lawyers, everyone's got their beliefs. And you can try to be impartial as much as you can. If something doesn't, way offend you, you might say, well, look, I don't agree with it, but there's the law. Law says, I'm sorry, you win. I wish it wasn't the case, but that's the law. That would be impartial. That's as best as you can get. But then you get these ones that just like, God tells me, and I'm going to do it. Or you get these Republican right wingers on the Supreme Court we have now, like Thomas and Alito. Thomas saying, I don't think the Voting Rights Act should ever have taken place. So yeah, no such thing as impartiality, and in some cases you got nutcases. I almost thought, we just shouldn't have anyone who's religious be a judge, because in this country we talk about, we don't. There was a big scare about Sharia law is going to happen. The Muslims are coming over and they're going to change our laws to Sharia law. It's happening here. It's happening there. Sharia law, and we don't want to change our laws. We're a Christian country, which we're not. I mean, it depends on how you argue what a Christian is. But at any rate, we shouldn't have Christians. But the thing is, Christians can be decent people and they can do right things, and Republicans can be decent people. They can do right things. Although right now you wouldn't know it because they're all just Trump bootlickers. So that's all it was them. What happens? Okay, so we got China recently did a good move. And China is cool in a way because it's got so much power that with the United States trying to be the big bully now and say, all right, we're going to put tariffs on people. We're not playing by the old rules anymore. We're making a level playing field. But they can't do anything to China, mostly because China has rare earth minerals that we absolutely need for everything. So China at any point just says, no more rare earths for you. And suddenly we say, oh, that, 100% tariff, that's just 20% tariff. And well, maybe it's only 8% tariff. And you know what? We're going to delay putting it off until next week, next month, next year. Maybe we won't even do it. Yeah. So China's got the upper hand. Well, at any rate, the United States is still pushing against them. And so China just decided, let's up the ante a little bit. And so they put sanctions on 2 European Union banks. And China is one of the hugest markets in the world, financial markets. So when these banks no longer have access to the Chinese market, that's significant. Now, what China did is on these banks, they were kind of smallerish banks in Lithuania. They weren't hitting any big Bundestag, any things in Germany or France. But they were showing their hands, saying, "Looky here, guys, this is what we got. You want to keep pushing. This is what's going to happen to you." Well, all right. They made their move. They certainly made a mistake. Made a move, and the EU is looking at this, and they're starting to shake. You know why? Because the EU is getting caught between a rock and a hard place. What's the rock? The rock is China and Russia. What's the hard place? The hard place is the United States, because the United States is insisting that the EU toe the line, go along with this. And where is this really happening? This is really happening with China and India, another 2 gigantic mega money entities, buying Russian oil, which the United States has sanctions against. And the United States decided to say, you know what, it's no longer enough that we sanction Russia. We're going to sanction anyone who deals with Russia. Yeah, that's right. We're telling anybody, you can't buy from Russia, you can't buy from Russia. And that means China and India. And they're telling EU, listen, don't you have any dealings with China and India. But the problem is, the EU has to have dealings with China, India. Their businesses are already entwined. All the businesses are international these days, and so their economies are getting squeezed. Especially Germany is really coming to the forefront with all the news reports about weakening economies. Don't hear anything about Spain, Italy, or France. or any of the other countries there. But Germany's getting pointed at as their economy's, suffering. And so the United States is telling you, stay away from China, stay away from India. Um, but they don't know what to do. And it was funny. One of these commenters was commenting on it, and he says, you know what, their choice is, the EU. The choice is to either focus on sovereignty or follow the U.S. into the underworld. Into the underworld. I love it when people have a sense of humor. So, at any rate, this just goes to show how the U.S. has a stranglehold on the European Union, and part of it is strangle, like, you strangle me, but part of it is, we're good buddies. Yeah, we'll do anything you want. They're part of it. They're friends. They're all going along with it. So it's part strangle, and I guess it's I guess it's one of those kind of strangle setups where you like being strangled. You know what I'm talking about? So, any rate, um, last little blip. Young lady named Miley Biggs. She's the daughter of a Senator Andrew Biggs, and she's a conservative, right wing conservative, and she posted like a year ago about how women shouldn't even be in politics. They should be in the home. That's where they should be. That's where she wants to be. She wants to be a mother, just a nurturer. That's what women do. So that was a year ago. Now suddenly this year she's running for an office in her state senate office. She's now running. What a hypocrite! Last year it was women shouldn't be in politics. They shouldn't even have the right to vote. And which brings up another interesting topic. Hegseth, the head of the Department of Defense, he belongs to a church that's in D.C. And this pastor, he is another one who says women shouldn't vote. And just another comment related to that one. So there you go, a bunch of stuff. I keep thinking somehow I'm going to do something short and quick, and meanwhile, it never turns out being that way. Listen, I hope you liked. I hope you subscribed. I had a new subscriber, someone I never talked to. Usually, I'm just hitting up all my friends and family. Can you subscribe? Can you subscribe? And somebody out of the blue subscribed to me. I can't tell you how happy I am. Well, I hope I get more of those. All of you, have a nice day. I hope to see you all again. Take care.